La 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 la. Leonie Dawson refuses to be categorized. My loves today, I think I'm going to do something a little bit different, and this is probably going to be maybe a longer and more emotional uh, blog. No, this is a podcast. Yeah, good on me. Anyway, I wanted to share with you mistakes I've made in my business. And I'm going to talk about the mistakes I made last year and mistakes I've made, like 6 years ago, and mistakes that I made in the beginning of my business as well. Because I feel like, one, it's fun. It's always fun to hear about other people's mistakes. It makes you feel less alone. And it's also just really useful, maybe for you to see that mistakes are a part of this process and that you can still be successful even when you make mistakes, and you can forgive yourself and give yourself acceptance and know that that's part of being human, as much as it pains any of us to think that, but making mistakes is part of being human. So I think I made quite a lot of mistakes last year, and it was kind of like all internal mistakes. And I realized this like as I was doing my kind of yearly planning. I was going through my goal workbooks and I was doing my reflection of 2022, and I just wasn't happy with, it wasn't just the results, but it was the way that I was feeling inside me. I just didn't feel like I was on fire last year. I didn't feel like I was on sole purpose. I just didn't feel thrilled with the body of work that I'd created. And so I was looking into what mistakes I made that, that got me there. So, first and foremost, I was psychiatrically diagnosed with ADHD about halfway through the year, and I usually, when you are diagnosed with ADHD, it's very, very common. It's to be expected, but you have a period where your symptoms are even more exacerbated because you become very aware of them, and you just have this kind of ADHD regression. And I did. I had a massive productivity slump because I was just constantly head fucking myself. Just like, oh, is this my ADHD? And oh, my dopamine levels must be low. And you just like start thinking so much about the ADHD instead of just like getting on, cracking on, and doing the fucking thing. So I don't want to over-identify too much with the ADHD this year. I just want to be like, you know what, cool. And I actually know how to work around this in a lot of ways. I've been doing this all my life. I don't need to headfuck myself over this. I am reading Peter Shankman's book Faster Than Normal at the moment, and I think that's a really useful reframe for me because it looks at the ADHD brain as being it can be a real entrepreneurial gift, and it's recognizing that it works at a much faster pace than others. I think when I was like reading a lot of books and articles about ADHD, of course it goes into the challenges so much, and so then you kind of over identify with the challenges. For me, I want to stay focused on the blessings of it while still giving myself the support and resources to make things even better, you know? Another mistake that I made personally, and it's a really tricky one. I know why I made the decisions I did, but my kids' school started going through, well, it's always been very up and down while we've been there for 4 years, but particularly in the last 6 months, it was really in crisis mode, and it was very, very stressful for me and my husband as parents, having kids to go to that school. And I just wish that we just fucked it off earlier. I really do, because it crushed me. It really did. And I feel teary still thinking about it, just because I was gaslit so much by school administrators in terms of being like, okay, this is going on, this is not good. And they're like, no, that's not going on. No, it's fine. everything's fine. You're like, that's fucking bullshit. You're lying. You're absolutely lying. And they completely were lying. Um, so that was really difficult. And it's very difficult, like, to go to a place every single day to drop off your children when you have no idea who is going to be there that day, who's in charge, whether they've got their shit together, when any, like, if anyone's going to have a fucking blow up that day. And like oh, it's just, oh, it's so frustrating and so difficult. I'm not going to say the school's name publicly, but if you're here on the Sunshine Coast and if you'd like to know where not to go, feel free to email me because I will let you know. um, so I wish we just pulled the pin earlier. I wish we'd gone, you know what, this is fucked. This is really fucked, and just gone a lot quicker. And pulled our kids out much, much sooner rather than hung out for as long as we did, waiting for the new year to start. So I know we did what we thought was best, but it was just an enormous energy suck. And I was going to therapy and all that kind of stuff. And like, as soon as we left, I was like, oh, I actually don't need to go to therapy anymore. There wasn't anything wrong with me. I was just in a toxic situation, a very toxic situation, and it was emotionally and abusive and such a head fuck. So I feel fucking great now. My kids are at a new school and it's different from where they were. We were in an alternative style school, but they're in a new school. We're really happy with how it's going so far, and praise be, may it continue to be low drama, low crazy. Please. Um, anyway, so that's like a more personal thing, but it definitely made a massive fucking impact on me. And as a repercussion of that, because I was so stressed out, I started seeking out other ways for me to like relax and, increase my dopamine and all that kind of stuff. And so I started playing an online game. And you will fucking laugh at this guy. You'll fucking laugh. But I played a game called Star Stables, which is this horsey game. And it's online game. And it's very popular with like tween teen girls around the world. And you get to buy horses and you train them up and you do races, and then you do different like activities, and you you can buy different costumes for your horsey. And anyway, I played it with my kids for a couple of weeks, and then they lost interest. I did not. I kept hammering that shit hard, and I was playing it a couple of hours a night. And what I realized was that I was dopamine addicted to gaming instead of being dopamine addicted to my business. So I liked seeing like me going up the levels in gaming. My horse is trained to a level 15. Oh, la di da. Instead of going, oh, I've accomplished that goal. And so I was using Star Stables as a stress relief instead of what I've usually done, which is used my business for stress relief. And I know that sounds funny, but my business has always been the place, like it's like the place that I can control, the place that I can really feel like I am in control of the universe in one very small way. And it's brought me a lot of dopamine over the years. So whenever I'm stressed, I'm always like, woohoo, it's so great. I get to like work on my business because that's going to give me dopamine hits and it's going to really thrill me. And so by getting more obsessed with the horsey levels instead of the business, that it had two results. One, I think it cost me about $100,000 in revenue. $100,000, guys. $100,000 in lost revenue because my focus was on training up my horsey. I am screaming. I do want to say here, like, I'm enormously privileged because my business makes so much money that it's not crisis for me to like lose $100,000, but it still just makes me wince, right? Like, oh, sweet Jesus. So if you've ever made a mistake in your business, like, was it you playing ponies online, pretty ponies, and costing your business $100,000? Fuck, fuck, fuck. Anyway, it's really funny. It's really funny and also like, oh no, I don't like that. So one, it had the revenue here, but two, it like when I got to the like December and I was looking at it, I was like, oh, this isn't great. This doesn't make me feel great. I don't feel like I'm living my best life when I'm not creating and instead I'm playing pretty pony games. I get that I was doing it in order to try and relieve some of the stress of school. The school situation, but wow, 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 wow. Enjoy that one, guys. Enjoy. I remember going for a walk with my darling friend Maddie, and I told her, like, and it was just as I was doing the figures and realized how much Star Stables had potentially cost me. And we were just screaming with laughter on the street, just screaming. We'll go for a walk, I'm just screaming. It's just like, Leonie, horses, $100,000. Oh, good fun, good fun. Hey, everything is content. It really is. Now, other mistakes I've made apart from the ponies. Hey, usually people get addicted to horses that cost them money in other ways, right? Bit of gambling, or you just own horses and they just cost you a lot of money, right? But surely it doesn't cost you $100,000 in 6 months. No, it's fine. It's fine. I love it except myself. Okay, other mistakes I made. I didn't invest enough energy, and this has been for a few years. A few years now. I didn't invest enough energy in masterminding and making sure that I was really spending time with people who pushed me to new levels. You know, just making it the new, like, the normal to have people who are just making really big shit happen. And I now have that. I've got a local mastermind group. I love them to bits. It's just such a beautiful thing. But I forgot to consciously create that for myself over years, over a few years. Other things I did, I last year I created Get Organized and how to hire and manage a VA. And those are really highly requested workshops, but, but, they were, I created them because they were so highly requested instead of me having that big soul urge to make something and be like, oh, this is the vision, this is what I need to create, and putting it out there. And like that's okay. Like sometimes business is just like a combination of those two things. My business has definitely been a combination of those two things, but I don't feel as great when I'm doing stuff that isn't just like a direct download, like this is the energy, this make it happen now, instead of just going, oh well, I should just make this because other people want it from me. It's just a different energy, and I do want to try and stay more focused on creating courses that are just coming from me. So to say that those courses aren't super helpful and useful for people, just a different energy. I noticed as well last year I really didn't blog and write consistently, and I don't think that was helpful. You know, I blogging and writing for me are the way that I connect with my soul and the divine, and I feel like that's a place I do my best work, and I just don't feel like I did that. So I want to recommit to doing more and more this year. All right, my husband's just come home from running an errand for me, so I'm going to go kiss him, and then I'll come back and I'll do some more talky. Back again, sugar plums. Well, that was a long kiss. Not in the way that you think. I ended up going grocery shopping afterwards, and now I'm back here. Hooray! And oh my god, I'm so thrilled. My new MacBook Air just arrived while I was out and I'm just so thrilled. I've been using the same kind of MacBook Air for over 10 years now. Um, and the ones that I have, I had two because one was ooh, maybe 8 years old or older, and then the other one was like 6 years old. Um, and I bought them specifically because I liked the setup of the keyboard. I get RSI really easily in my wrist, so there's only certain very specific kind of laptop and keyboard that doesn't give me RSI. And so, such was my obsession that for a while there, I couldn't use the new MacBook laptops that were coming out because of the angle and the way the keys were formed and that kind of stuff. And I bought one MacBook Pro that I couldn't use because it hurt my hands. So Chris got that to inherit that one, and then I really needed another one, and I ended up going to our local computer store and seeing if they had any stock, and they actually had stock of like a 2-3 year old laptop out the back. That was a brand new unopened MacBook Air from the era that I wanted, so I ended up buying that for like $2,000. Anyway, I've been hammering these laptops, and they both shit their pants at the start of this year. One shit its pants completely and needed its battery replaced for like the third time. I've just like kept on replacing these fucking batteries. And I thought, I'm just going to put this one out to pasture. And the other one just, as soon as I had a couple of tabs open, just started dying. And so I thought, this is ridiculous. I just need to now upgrade to a brand new spanking laptop. And thankfully they've changed the form and changed the keyboards back to something that I can use. So it's just arrived. I'm very excited. I'm very finicky about the laptops I use. And like, I did feel guilty about that for a while, and my husband was like, what are you talking about? Like, writers always have like this one fucking vintage typewriter that they can only write with, or one type of pen or one type of paper. So it's okay for you to be very finicky about the one tool of your craft. So I appreciated that. Anyway, I'm very thrilled to have a new MacBook Air, and long may it live. Long may it live. The one that died has already died. It's a running joke between me and my friend Tam, because years ago when we were living in Canberra, she was visiting me and we were doing a live stream that went for hours and hours. I think I was doing the academy, and we weren't going to stop live streaming until we hit a certain number of members. I think we live streamed for like 4 or 5 hours. And we got beers at one point and went out to the garden and having a fabulous time on the live stream, and knocked over a beer onto the laptop. And we thought that was the end of days for that laptop. And no, it's kept on going. And I think it actually improved. I think it improved the quality of it. I'm just joking. We did have to, years later, we had to replace the keyboard. But I've always had such good traction with my Mac laptops. They just last me for a fucking age, and I use them like workhorses. So anyway, that's my very excited new laptop vibes update. Let's get back into the content that I really want to talk to you about today, which is about mistakes that I've made. So some more mistakes that I made last year was, and this is a very small one, but I think it's important. So my whole ritual at that point was, when I was in the car and I had something to say, I would pop my Anchor app on record, and I'd shove it down the top of my overalls or whatever I was wearing and just talk into it while I was driving my car. And I had to do a lot of driving at that point to do school run and stuff. So I always had plenty of opportunity to do that. And then at one point, my app started malfunctioning, and I would record a whole bunch of stuff and then it wouldn't save. And it was so frustrating, and it kept on happening over and over and over again. I kept on, I'd finish the end of the drive, I'd press stop, I'd press save, it wouldn't save, it'd just disappear. And I was like, well, fuck, I just spent all that time. And so I ended up repeating myself over and over again. It still wouldn't save. And then I was always in a rush by the time I got to the end of the destination. And so I wouldn't think to fix the app or work out, troubleshoot what the issue was. So for a few months there, I didn't really podcast purely just because I kept on having this app issue and my whole recording process was fucked. So looking back on it, I was like, probably could have spent a couple of minutes at home, sent myself a message like, hey, fix that fucking app because do the podcast, actually publish the podcast. But I didn't. Other issues I think I had was I started doing this tradition of monthly review posts about my business and my life, and it would include a lot of pictures and data or statistics, all that kind of stuff. And it was fun to start off with, but then it started feeling like a real chore, and they were just they were quite a lot of work to pull off, and not just in a way where I can just like creative stream every thought that I had. It was just that there's like lots of components to it, and so I started feeling hemmed in by that formula, and I don't do well with formulas, and I don't do well with consistency of like creating the same thing over and over again. And I think part of the issue is that usually I would like do a little write up about the things I'd done that month, and they were usually in dot point form, and so I would end up sharing things on there, like things I've done that ordinarily I would write a long blog post about, that really like went into the depth and the details and how it felt and all those experiences. But because I was doing this formula, then I would write this content that was just more dot point, and I just don't feel like it was my best creative work, and it also just didn't give me that like kind of spiritual high I get from really in-depth long form writing about something. So I think doing away with doing the monthly review posts at this point is a good idea, just so I can try out a different form of creativity again. I think as well, other issues that I did last year was I disobeyed my own advice, and I wasn't Ingrid the implementer. So if you've done any of my courses, you know that there's like three types of learners. There is Eleanor, the enthusiastic, who signs up for a whole bunch of courses and books and programs and mentoring and whatever, and then does absolutely fucking nothing with them. Then there is Ruby the reader, who just like buys it and reads it all but doesn't actually do the homework. And then there's Ingrid the implementer, who chooses to invest in a program, then goes through, does all the lessons and does all the homework in the lessons and implements the ideas into their business. And it's a really important concept and a really important way to get the most amount of value out of education and learning new shit. And I feel like I slipped off upholding Ingrid the implementer principles, and I went more into kind of Ruby the reader, or sometimes I think Eleanor the enthusiastic, but I wasn't too bad at just like buying a lot of shit and not using it. It was more just like reading and not doing anything with it. So I really want to recommit to being an Ingrid the implementer with any learning that I do. Last year I also just felt like I just wasn't a great manager, but the thing is, for me, I'm actually just not, it's not what I'm born to do. It really isn't. And I keep learning this lesson over and over again. It's just not my jam. And like with the current team setup, it worked really well for a while. So I had a person doing customer service emails, and then I had an assistant who was my online business manager, and she was doing kind of managing a lot of the sales and launches and stuff like that. And I realized like I'm really not taking full ownership of my results, and something needed to change. And like in my yearly planning, I was just like, oh, I think I need to actually go back to being my own online business manager again. And I still need a VA, just a part-time assistant who does all of the customer service emails and does all of like the tech background and stuff like that. But I really need to make sure that my fingers are all over the sales and marketing and copywriting, all that stuff. It's just kind of come from me. And most importantly, I need to make sure that I have full ownership of the results that I have, because when you've got an online business manager, like there's a different kind of expectation usually. Um, and so I wasn't sure how that would work out, and because I dearly love the assistants I have now, and I didn't want to mess them up in any way. So my primary assistant came to me, and for health reasons, she needed to reduce her work intensity for 6 months, and I was like, and thought that that would mean that she might need to quit, even though she didn't want to. And I was like, no, we can actually just like work this out, because I am happy to step back into being kind of my own online business manager and launch manager, sales manager myself. And so now they're doing all the customer service and tech support and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. And then I chatted with my customer service person and just to check in how they were feeling, and they were kind of more than happy just to not be doing customer service anymore, because they've got a whole bunch of other projects to work on instead with other things. So in their own business and stuff. So it ended up just working out beautifully for everyone, and I'm very, very grateful. I'm very grateful for my two assistants. Like they've worked with me for a long time now, and I just so appreciate that they are so empathetic, understanding, willing to take to like have communication and feedback. Like the amount of people that I've hired who have fucking tantrums like a toddler, or refuse to just clearly communicate their needs or their concerns or their worries. It's mind-boggling. So the two that I have that I have been working with have just been incredible, and I'm so frigging grateful for them. So those are kind of the lessons of the last year for me in terms of the mistakes I made, the tweaks I wanted to make. I think in terms of historically the mistakes I've made in my business, there's been some that I've just learned huge lessons from. The first definitely is hiring a large team. So my business was growing and growing and growing, and the way that I thought I needed to deal with that growth was to, hire more and more team. And along the way, I realized that I hate that. I hate it. I hate managing staff. I do not like having a large team. I do not like managing people. And there's just something about my brain that's like I inherently don't understand most people. And, that's likely because I'm autistic. So I never understand when people aren't just straight with me and empathetic and have clear communication. I don't like dealing with people drama whatsoever. I joke, but it's not really a joke. I really do prefer to only work with neurotypical people now. Sorry, neuroatypical, neurodiverse people. Neurodiverse people only because I understand them. I understand how their brain works, and I understand that they will clearly communicate to me what they're going through. And we can work out stuff together. But neurotypical stuff, the subtlety and the insinuation that I should know something I haven't been told something, I don't get that at all. And so it was actually just heartbreaking and hugely stressful for me to go through having a large team. And the thing that I discovered is that when you have a large team, you have to work harder, not less, right? Like, so I usually only work like 10 hours a week. That's how I've always done it historically in my business, because I was working full time, and then I had a baby, and then I had another baby, and that's where I wanted to place my time, was on my family. So that 10 hours a week that's just carving out that amount of time away from my other commitments for my business, And when I had a team, I noticed that I had to work even more hours. I was up to 20, 25 hours, and that still seems less than most people, which totally is. However, for somebody like me who's autistic, I still had very small children at that point that I wanted to be around, and I felt like I was missing out on a lot of stuff. And my physical body actually just doesn't, it can't cope with that many hours at a desk, because I have hypermobility and my bones dislocate quite easily. So for that range of factors, working more hours is just not in my plan. And I also found that I might have been working more, but I was doing less of the important work, the important work for me. So I couldn't create as much. And it was actually very, very difficult for me to carve out time for me to actually do the creative work in my business. And it even got to the point where I'd have to start doing it on weekends because my work week no longer meant that I could create, which is just insane, right? Like you create a business purely because you want to create, and then you're back to this place again where you have to create only on weekends because your job is sucking the life out of you doing things that you don't want to do. So a large team is not for me, and I don't foresee in the future that I'll ever go back to having more than one or two part-time assistants. So I remember crying in my accountant's office, like after that experience. And, it took a few years to right size my business after that. Like, when people would leave, I wouldn't replace them. I unfortunately had to fire a few people for not being able to do their jobs. And yeah, it was just kind of like this natural attrition. I didn't just go one day, oh, well, I'm just going to blow this whole thing up. No, it was kind of a weaning down process. But I still remember crying to my accountant and just saying, I just thought that was the right thing to do. And it sucked. It sucked so bad. And I feel like I've just made the most enormous mistake in, hiring a team and then going through this process now of reducing my team size back again. And he said to me, Leonie, like when you're in a high growth business like yours, you only have two options. Well, you've got three. The first is you hire a large team in order to deal with that business growth. The second is that you outsource a lot of your stuff. So you're effectively hiring other agencies with their own staff to do that work for you. And then thirdly is to throttle your business growth or streamline so excessively so that you don't have to do either of those options. And the only way that you find out which one is the right one for you is by testing and doing it. And she said, like, I've just seen it so many times. There's no one right way to grow a business. It's to do with the personal makeup, like the personality of the founder, whether one is going to work better for them or not, because one of them isn't inherently better than the other. They both come with pros and cons. It's just working out what the pro and con for you is. So for me, I ended up doing a little bit of the outsourcing thing in that for a while I worked with a publishing agency to print and publish my books instead. And now I'm doing print on demand again, so that I don't have to have a huge team to deal with that print experience. And then I also did, streamline my business as well, so that the nice to haves I just didn't do anymore. I think as well, a part of this is like I thought I needed to do business like anyone else, and whenever I get into that mindset, it's just not the right one for me. I need to accept that I do business in a way that's custom fit for me and me alone, and that's a beautiful thing. And that I can definitely like take inspiration and get ideas from how somebody else runs their business, and I can test it and try it out and see if it works for me. But there is no one right way to run a business, and I am 100% allowed to create a business that works beautifully for me and for my gifts and for what I want in my life. Another mistake I made was hiring a person with narcissistic personality disorder. You don't find out until it's too late and they've already wreaked a huge amount of damage. Um, I I can't remember a time where I was more fucked up by a person than being in it with around a narcissist, just working with a narcissist, um, and seeing how personally devastating it was to me and to my confidence levels. And that is with, I have a beautiful husband who is not like that whatsoever. I have a really lovely home life. I have a very high level of self confidence, um, and a really good understanding of my own self worth in a lot of ways, um, and how completely that self worth and self belief got decimated by being around a narcissist. And it made me hyper aware of, if you're in a romantic relationship with a narcissist, that would be even more debilitating, I think, because I had a husband in the background going, that's not okay. That doesn't feel right whatsoever. Like, I'm not happy about this person. And, um, I had a sanity check going on for me. And even still, I was really broken by it. And it took a while to heal from that experience, afterwards. I'm grateful to know now the signs of narcissistic abuse, and I'm grateful because it now sort of gives me a little bit, like, I can usually see the signs in it much sooner. And I can also see, like, the characters in my history where, narcissism was at play as well. It was often like the most challenging relationships that I've had, not romantic. Oh no, I had one romantic like that, but family relationships or friendship relationships where things just felt really fucking off. It's usually because of narcissistic personality disorder. So, if you haven't already, it's useful to have a look at a narcissistic personality disorder checklist, just so that you can be aware of, what that's like, in case you come across it. And another mistake I made, and this was years ago, and my husband was my saving grace once more, was I wasn't paying enough attention to the bottom line in my business. I was looking at the revenue and not the profit margins. And so I thought I was doing awesome because look at my top line. And then, my husband was like, hey, I'm seeing that we aren't actually moving the financial needle here whatsoever. What are we doing? What do we need to change? We need to, right course. And, like, one thing I want you to know about me is that I am a person who's, my opinions are not always easily changed. And I'm very grateful that my husband is very strong within himself. And so when I give him kickback for something he's told me, he's like, okay, I get that you're upset about that, but I'm still going to keep raising it with you anyway. Like, he's not, particularly concerned if I don't take well to his feedback. He's like, well, I still need to tell you anyway. I'm still going to keep telling you because red flag, red flag, red flag. So I'm very grateful for his, grace and understanding, and, how solid he is in himself, and for him to go, hey, babes, love you, and you're fucking this part up. Like, I appreciate that. When I was writing this, like, coming up with the dot points to share with you, I realized, like there's these different phases of my business, and in the very, very early days of my business, I was making different mistakes. So in the very early days, I definitely struggled with burnout a lot more because I just was so running at my goals, and, without any sense of work-life balance or rest or anything like that. One particularly memorable moment, I was still working full-time in the public service. My business had a huge growth phase, and I realized the only way that I could deal with it was to sleep less. And so I was staying up till midnight every night working after I'd finished, a whole day at work, um, for the working in the government. And then I started waking up at like 5 a.m. or whatever. And one particularly special day, I was like, jumped out of bed, 5 a.m. I was like, wait, okay, I'm going to go outside and meditate for 100 breaths first, and that will, that's good self care. And I was just so exhausted, and ran outside into the backyard and did my meditation, and then went to stand up, and I collapsed just kind of head first into the ground. And I remember laying there kind of laughing at myself because my arms wouldn't move to pick myself back up. I was just so exhausted. I'd just taken everything out of my fuel tank. And I thought, well, you really wanted to get grounded this morning, Leonie, and here you are, very grounded. The ground is in your face. And after that, I was like, you need to go back to bed. So I went back to bed. And over, a long period of time, I learned, one, I can't do everything. Two, having a customer service VA is critical for me personally, because otherwise I can't manage. And I also need to have essential like stop work times and make sure I'm getting more than enough sleep. For me personally, I need at least 9 to 10 hours sleep a night in order to function. That is on the higher side, likely because I'm autistic, but it's just what I need. So I need to give myself that if I want to carry on. And at that point as well, I really learned about the economic cost of burnout. And what that means is I was doing these huge stints of work and with my business while still working full time, and then I would burn out colossally, and then I'd have to take 3 months off from working so hard. And at the time, I realized that for me, if I was burnt out, it meant that I was losing about $5,000 a month in income. So that's like $15,000 because I'd have to take, I'd have to take time off to try and heal. And so I realized that anything I could do that cost under $15,000 to prevent burnout was a good investment to stop me from having burnout. Does that make sense? Like $15,000 was going to be the cost of every single burnout. And so I needed to look at how I could prevent that burnout from happening. And sometimes that meant investing in things like, massages and self-care and days off and things like that. And then it was also like crafting containers around my life so I didn't burn out. And I got better and better and better at knowing when the train of burnout was coming for me and working out what I need to do, pump the brakes and cushion myself so that didn't happen, or when it did happen it was going to be for far less time. So that was a really huge mistake I was making in the early days, but it was, I needed to learn that lesson. Another thing I did was I didn't take good care of myself, and I didn't give myself the conditions I needed to thrive in the early days. So for example, I became the solo breadwinner for our family, and we had a baby, and we bought a house that only had one bedroom, and I couldn't work in the house because baby just knew, and plus I couldn't record anything because if she heard me, she would wail to be with me, and so I was, I was going to go work at cafes. I was working up trees in the local park. I'm not even kidding. I was working up trees. But, I was living in a really hot place and very humid. At one point, I got stuck up the tree because there was a snake up there. And it was just some Wild West fucking shit. And I remember talking to my mentor, Hiroboga, about it at the time. And she's like, Leonie, how can you expect yourself to do your best work in these conditions? You need to get a place. And so I felt like a huge step to go and hire an office. And but the answer was like in plain sight. From our house, I could look across to this set of buildings. I went and talked to a real estate agent, and they had like spare offices there, and they like lent it to me for $50 a week. It was amazing. $50 a week, and it made a huge difference to my life. So, often you need to craft containers to help you, do your best work. It doesn't have to be like the best of everything, but at the very least, something that's not going to like endanger your health or, prevent you from doing work, which some of the things I was doing did. um, and the last thing I really remember was when I had my first baby. And I was going through postnatal depression and anxiety and having just such a god awful time. And my husband, he was like, "Come on, we're going to go out to go have some lunch together." So we took baby with us, and I think she was about maybe 9 months old by that point, and I was just so fucked up. I was so fucked up and so depleted. And he brought out two pieces of paper, and he said, "Okay, can you just write down on this piece of paper everything that you think you need to be doing right now, and everything that's really important, like everything that's your job right now, and I'll write down the things that are important for me to be doing right now." And so I started writing, and I just kept on writing and kept on writing and kept on writing. Turned the piece of paper over, and I just kept on writing. And at a certain point, he's like, "Did you want to stop?" And I'm like, "I don't think I've got it all yet." And he's like, "I think, look, for the purposes of this exercise, let's just say that that's good enough." And then he got me to read out to him all of the things that I thought I needed to be doing. And some of those, like, all important priorities that I thought were absolutely essential, was that I needed to become an organic gardener with my own veggie patch that I harvested every single day and made 3 nutritious homemade meals from every single day for us and for our daughter. And if I didn't, I was a massive failure. And this is coming from somebody who's never gardened and never been that much of a like good in the kitchen or interested in the kitchen whatsoever. Like, I just had all these beliefs in my head of what it meant to be a good mum and a good person, and I was driving myself absolutely fucking insane. And so every time I was eating food that I hadn't made that wasn't from the organic garden, which was 100% of the time, I felt enormously guilty. And so I read it all out to my husband. I just still remember his face and him just going, "Honey, no wonder you're feeling so overwhelmed. Like, that's a lot. That is a lot to take on. And those are things that are not particularly that important, nor have they ever been that important to you, so they don't need to be that important now." And he showed me his list, and all of his list was be a good husband, be a good dad. And at the time he was studying at university, so he was doing that. He was doing that as well. And he said, "Leonie, in all the time that I've loved you, what I know is important for you is you want to be a good partner, you want to be a good mum, you want to make art and be a creative, and you want to run your business. And that's it. Everything else is just going to have to go fuck itself. Like, the organic garden can go fuck itself. And the homemade meals, it doesn't matter. She's being fed, and if we buy that stuff from the supermarket, that is completely fine, and it's what we've been doing our whole lives anyway." And it was just a real permission to just take off a lot of stuff off my plate and just have permission just not to give a fuck about it anymore. So that was a very nice relief to know that. So those are the things that I think historically I've made mistakes with. And when I think about the things that I don't feel were ever mistakes, there's quite a number. I have never ever regretted putting my kids and my husband and our life together as a central priority. The business has to fit around us, not the other way around. I also don't regret not traveling, not going to conferences or flying all over the place to go to events or masterminds or whatever. I've lived a very home based life for a very long time. I've gone to fuck all things, and I'm very happy. I might have missed out on a lot of opportunities outside that could have grown my business, but I don't give a fuck because one, I like being at home, and two, I don't want to be away from my family really. So, no, thank you. I also don't regret the fact that I haven't really had like a very high paid one to one business coach. I had kind of like a spiritual mentor for many years, Hiraboga. Um, but in terms of, those really high paid business coaching experiences, it's not actually been for me. I did it once 10 years ago, didn't really get a huge amount out of it. What works for me and my personality and the way my brain works is to buy books and buy programs and be an autodidact and do it on my own time. It also works for me to be a part of kind of more group mastermind experiences, and sometimes those are formal and sometimes like informal, and some of those are paid. But I don't have to have a one-to-one coach to succeed. It's just not my personality. I'm also really grateful for having ADHD and autism. It, yeah, sure, it comes with challenges, like everything does, but it's still a gift to have a sensitive nervous system and a brain that takes in a lot more detail than the average brain, and a brain that also works at a very different speed. Like I always talk about the fact that an ADHD brain is like a Ferrari brain. It can go amazing speeds, but it's going to need a lot more servicing and a whole team of support to keep it on the road. Much more than just, your average Toyota Camry kind of brain. So I'm grateful that I've got it, and I'm also grateful that I get to build a life and business around it as well. And I don't regret the fact that I don't have to pretend to be professional or polished in my business. I'm glad I made the decision to share about hard times publicly, to talk about postnatal depression, my neurodiversity, experiencing illnesses like hyperemesis gravidarum, talking about the experience of right sizing my business and the difficult times in life and business. I would choose to do that over and over again because fuck being professional. With all of this, I just want you to know you're not alone in making mistakes. Mistakes are a really normal part of business. They are experiments that give you really useful information. Often you don't know what the right option for you is until you try it, and you're like, oh, okay, no, I didn't like that, no, that didn't work, that sucked. And it's not something that you have to take personally and feel in pain about, like you're less than for that. It's just information. You're like, oh, okay, cheers, thanks for that, and now I do something different. So I think it's useful. I want to normalize the experience of making mistakes in business, and for you to know that you can make mistakes like playing pretty ponies that cost you $100,000 or hiring a sociopath. It's just important to forgive yourself and accept yourself and just keep exploring anyway, keep turning up. Just because you've made one mistake does not mean that you're shit, that you're doomed, that you're bad at business, that you've got bad intuition, you're a bad judge of character. No, it's just a normal experience of life, and you're doing really, really well, and I'm really proud of you and all of us for continuing to be human and do the things anyway. I love you so much. I hope this has been useful, and may we make mistakes graciously and gracefully and forgive ourselves and keep turning up anyway. Bye!